Hey guys, because of the snow day, we didn't really get a chance to go over the first studio very much in class, and I know for my Tuesday, Thursday class, we did not get to go over it at all. So I'm making this sort of review so that I can kind of explain it for you because I know it's your first studio activity. Um, so as you can see on my screen, I'm on our Canvas homepage. And what you need to do to go to the studio is you need to go to Unit 1. And then you can also find this on the calendar also, but I'm going to take you to right down here is your Unit 1 studio. So if you scroll down, you'll see your first studio activity, and there are some other things on this page. There's explanations for things like the studio engagement and how the individual studio activities work. In terms of assessment, as you remember, I have a complete versus an incomplete policy where each activity is either fully complete or it's marked incomplete, which essentially marks it kind of as a draft. And then you can revise it if you choose before the end of that unit. So if you go to Studio 1 here, it will open you up to the first page. And this first studio activity, you'll notice as you scroll through, is pretty multifaceted. It's the longest of the activities for this unit. And the goal for this activity is to help you brainstorm that inquiry idea that we're working on in this unit. So by the end of this unit, you will present to a small group what you want your inquiry idea to be. So we're going to go through 4 steps in this activity to help you kind of get an idea, or at least a starting idea for what you might want that to be. So at the top, you'll see kind of the gist of the activity, and then you'll also see kind of the general objective, the due date. For materials and submission, what you can do for most of these studio activities is open a separate document. It doesn't have to be in your daybook. You can just open a Word document and complete all the steps for that studio activity in that document and then submit it at the end of the activity. What I did ask you to do was in step 3, you're going to be working with Padlet, which is pretty easy once you kind of start working with it. It seems a little weird at first. But what you'll do is screenshot your posts and replies on that Padlet, and then you'll also submit those at the end of the activity. So it's a little bit easier for me to find what you did when I'm assessing it. Okay, so for a complete for this activity, you have to do everything. So all the steps have to be completed. All the individual prompts have to be completed. The requirements have to be met. So if I ask you to quote from a source, provide a link, write a certain number of sentences, it's got to be done. Or I'll mark it incomplete, which means, again, it's a draft. You're welcome to revise it for anything that would be incomplete. And if I mark it incomplete, it'll include comments that explain what I am missing, what I need from you. Okay, so step 1, which can go in your document, is your initial inquiry ideas. It just kind of goes through 4 prompts to help you think about some different areas of your life that might help you choose an inquiry idea. So number 1 is, what is your major and why? So what made you go into this particular field? Maybe there's something interesting to you in this field, or some aspect of it you're planning to study later or focus on that might be something that you could research now and make it more relevant for you. Question 2, what kinds of activities are you involved in? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? Is there anything that you're kind of already involved in terms of that could possibly be an inquiry idea? Question 3 is clubs, groups, organizations. Maybe you're already part of an organization that advocates for something, or you're already part of a fraternity, sorority, club that helps out with a charity that you might be able to do some research into. 4th one is kind of a catch-all. It's kind of anything else that you might be able to think of. Is there anything else you've read lately, seen lately, have a personal interest in that might be a good inquiry idea? It's a good idea to kind of start thinking, I guess, as seriously as possible as you can about choosing something, because once we get to the end of this unit and you propose it, that's your idea, your inquiry topic for the rest of the semester. So it's a good idea to pick something that you genuinely will kind of want to do a little bit, so that it's less painful for you as you go through some of these like major assignments with lots of research requirements. So step 2 is read, watch, or listen. There's nothing really to write down for this particular activity. Just ask you to start reading some interesting things. It can be, so I'm kind of here. It can be attached to things in that first step, so things you might have brought up. You can branch out and just go read things unrelated. So you're welcome to base it off of step 1, but it's not required. Just go read, watch, listen to something that's interesting to you. Could be a documentary, it could be a blog, it could be a news source, it could be a TED Talk. You're eventually going to choose 2 that you're going to work with in step 3. So here's what I've written kind of about that. So you can read and skim through several things, but you're going to pick 2 that you're going to work with in the next step. If you need some more help, you're welcome to click here, and it gives you a list of options that include things like some different newspapers. And I've got Time Magazine, PBS News. I believe TED is my first one because that's what people tend to like the most, so that's on there also. And try to choose something that is actually a fact hunt, and be careful of things that you know are on the list of banned topics that are included in that assignment sheet for the inquiry idea proposal. If it's a fact hunt, it's not something that people have multiple perspectives about. It's not a problem that anybody's really trying to solve. You could look it up and find the answer really quickly, and you want to avoid something like that. Okay. So step 3 is this Padlet that you're going to be posting to. And I'll show you the Padlet. It's down here at the bottom. So you can actually post to the Padlet directly on this page. Or you can open it up separately here. And here is kind of what the Padlet looks like on its own page. And what you're going to be doing is first is posting your 2 options, or your 2 sources that you decided to share with your peers. The goal here is that everybody posts 2 things that they thought were interesting, so that you can see lots of different ideas very quickly. You can kind of skim through and get some ideas. So the way you would post that is by either clicking this little button down here, or you can click anywhere on the blue, essentially, and it'll pop up. Now I already have my name on here. If yours says anonymous, like this person's, then you could put your name here. And you will be including something in the write something, and you'll also be adding a comment, but we'll talk about that in a minute. The way you would add it is you would click where this plus sign is, click here. If you have a link, so if I wanted to use the New York Times, I would copy that link, paste it here, click this little right arrow. It'll think for a minute and ask you if it looks good, and then you'll click OK. And then I'm also asking you to write, include a little question or quote, something that would be kind of catchy. I think this person over here, if you look at Catherine DeLee, added a quote to go with hers. A few people just ask an interesting question, something that's going to help people kind of quickly see what it's about and whether or not they want to read it or would find it interesting. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. So the steps to complete that are here. So part 1 is add your 2 choices to the Padlet. So directions are there to double click to add it, write your name in the title section, click add attachment, include your link, add a hook where it says write something, so like 1 to 2 sentences, something that's a catchy title, a question, a quote, like I showed you before just on the Padlet page. And then add a 2 to 4 sentence comment below it, and obviously attach your name to it so I know that you did it. That just explains kind of what your interest is with that particular article. So if you read it, what was interesting to you about it? What is your opinion? When you're done with that, you're going to go through part 2, respond to what 2 other people posted. So as you're skimming through and someone posted an interesting documentary or an interesting article, visit it, look at it, and write a 3 to 4 sentence response back to that person's choice. You can respond with your opinion to the issue that was brought up as a whole. It can be a response to your peers' initial comment. It can be your own reaction to something discussed or a point brought up in that text. It's really kind of up to you, as long as it's like a meaningful, substantial comment. And then obviously, please make sure you add your name to everything that you post on that Padlet. And then so when you post, it would look kind of like this. So you'd have your name, and you'd have that like little quote at the beginning, and you'd have your comment there at the bottom. And that would be kind of what part 1 would look like. And then your Padlet is below. When you're done, you're going to continue to the next page. And this is a close reading and reflection. Now that you've gone through some general ideas and you've done a little bit of reading and you've posted, responded, you have a lot of options available to you. You can go through that Padlet and pick something that appeared posted that you haven't worked with yet. The goal is to narrow it down to one text, one source, a documentary, a blog, a newspaper, something that really looks like something interesting to you that you might want to turn into your inquiry idea for the semester. And you're going to do a close reading and reflection of just that one piece. So you have some questions here. So explain some things about the context of the piece you chose. Summarize what you read in a few sentences. Explain where it came from. So the name of the site or newspaper, name of the author, publication date. So just some basic information. Talk about what you found compelling, why this piece was interesting to you. Number 3 is talk about what you maybe agreed or disagreed with, so your personal reactions to specific points. Try to quote or make a really specific reference when you're responding. Talk about connections you can make, so not responding just to this text in a vacuum, but think about how this might connect to yourself or people you know or other things that you've read, things you've seen on the news, stuff you study in class, that kind of stuff. Ask some critical questions, and there's some options here. Ask questions that you might have for this author or the creator of this text about their opinions or the evidence that they used. Questions maybe you might have about the source's credibility if you're skeptical of that. Questions that reflect something you're curious about, just about that issue, like where would you go from here? Which would kind of lead you into question number 6, which is where could you go from here with your questioning? So how could you turn this into an LOI? What would you want to research or look further into or understand about this issue? And 7 is just sort of a final point. How do you feel about this choice? How do you feel about this text now that you've written about it? Is this really what you might stick with? What other ideas do you have? Yes, a couple of requirements here while you're writing. Make sure you use specific references or quotes. Provide me a link so I can access the source that you're talking about. And obviously develop your prompts. All right. So when you get here, this is not the student view. This is not what you see. This is my teacher view. You will have something kind of down here at the bottom that asks you to submit that document. And I ask you to submit everything here. You can post the one document. For your screenshots, you're welcome to use a screenshot, a capture tool, or a snipping tool, depending on whether you have a Mac or a PC. You're welcome to ask me questions about how to do that, how to do this in class if you run into problems. You can paste those into the Word document before you submit it, or you can submit it all as separate files, as long as I can see all of the writing that you did and I have very quick access to the things that you posted and the things that you replied to. Because with a lot of students, it gets pretty messy trying to find everybody's responses and posts and things. So all your writing in one document, the images of your work that you did on the Padlet, and then hit submit, and you're done. I know this seems a little bit longer. It is long for some of the other activities, and is sort of bringing you from this big picture general questioning down to a specific text that you might use to lead you into your LOI. So if you have questions, feel free to send me an email, and happy reading.